Feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances, while the township supervisor.
Fox 32 has investigated Henyard's use of a police security detail, taking officers off the street and costing thousands.
In most American towns, a mayor isn't just a figurehead. They're a neighbor, a trusted voice, someone you might bump into at the local diner or see cutting the ribbon at a school event. But in one small community just south of Chicago, that familiar image has been flipped on its head, replaced by something darker and far more disturbing. In Dalton, Illinois, the person chosen to lead with integrity has now become the epicenter of a scandal so deep, so chaotic, it's nearly impossible to separate misjudgment from misconduct. This isn't a made-up story. It's not some wild internet rumor or an overblown tale from a political blog. It's happening. And what's unraveling? Here is more explosive than any scandal you've binge-watched on a streaming service. Because this time, the fallout didn't just tarnish a name, it tore through the fabric of an entire town. At the center of it all is Mayor Tiffany Henyard, a name that once stood for progress and empowerment. But behind the carefully crafted public image lies a disturbing trail of alleged corruption, selfish ambition, and actions that some claim have left Dalton in chaos.
The government always does it, is to go and investigate people around her. And that's.
There was a time, not too long ago, when she was actually caught trying to steal a car. Not exactly the kind of behavior you'd associate with someone who would later become the town's highest-ranking official. But somehow the public either overlooked it, wasn't informed, or chose to ignore it when it came time to vote. And that, in itself, says something deeply unsettling about the erosion of public trust. The fact that someone with a record, like, that could not only run for office but win it, points to a serious breakdown in accountability and awareness. But this story isn't just about one reckless act or a buried past. As the months roll on,
that is the finding of an investigation of village finances and the spending habits of beleaguered Mayor Tiffany.
Rumors soon turned into investigations, and the allegations were chilling. Quiet talk of ties to organized crime, suspected affiliations with local gangs, murmurs that choices coming out of the mayor's office weren't just shady, they were dangerous. This wasn't the standard behind-the-scenes deal-making people have sadly come to expect. This was something more sinister. Something that felt like a town quietly being seized from within. And then, it got worse. Reports began surfacing that the local police force was being deliberately weakened. Officers were shuffled around, budgets were slashed, emergency response times dragged on, all of it happening under an administration that claimed to prioritize public safety. But why would anyone intentionally dismantle the last line of defense between their town and total disorder? Who stands to gain when those tasked with protection are stripped of their strength? That question haunted the entire community. As crime surged and fear took root, the mayor's political opponents began.
Not guilty of all 9 counts. I believe he's cooperating. And if you cooperate, you have to admit.
Political rivals started receiving threats, real ones, not just empty words. In one of the most disturbing turns of this story, bullets hit the homes of those brave enough to challenge her. The fear was no longer abstract. It settled deep into Dalton's foundation. This had moved far beyond corruption. It became a question of survival. These weren't policy debates. These were life and death stakes. And while residents feared for their safety, the mayor's attention seemed to drift even further away from the people she was elected to serve. In a bizarre twist, officers weren't patrolling the streets or solving crimes. Instead, they were being pulled from duty to escort Henyard on shopping sprees. Cops became chauffeurs, errand runners, personal guards, for a leader who now acted more like royalty than a public servant. And as taxpayers funded this spectacle, the neighborhoods became quieter, but not any safer. That silence masked something darker, a growing sense of being forgotten. Then came a scene so surreal, it felt like a skit, if only it weren't real. Cameras caught Henyard shoveling snow from a political opponent's driveway, grinning for the media, posing as the thoughtful mayor. But in context, it felt like a jab. Not compassion, no to service, just theater. A scripted gesture of generosity while the town quietly crumbled. No one was fooled, not for a second. When you take a step back and look at the damage, one truth becomes undeniable. This wasn't just failed leadership. It was a complete betrayal of trust. Real people, families, workers, children, were left exposed. Dalton's resources were drained, its safety dismantled, and its spirit ridiculed by the very person entrusted to protect it. They believed in her. And in return, they got chaos, cruelty, and a circus. But perhaps the worst part isn't even the scandal. It's the silence left behind. The people who still have to pick up the pieces. Single moms are wondering why the police never show. Elderly neighbors are too afraid to step outside after dark. Kids growing up believing that leadership means looking out for yourself first. They're the ones who bear the weight of all this. And now they wait for justice, for answers, for someone who will finally step up and right what's been wronged. Because Dalton might be a small town, but its voice is loud. And if nothing changes, this won't just remain a local disaster. It'll stand as a warning to the whole country about what happens when power is handed to someone who believes they're above the very people they were elected to serve.